Hello, welcome back to my channel. Don't know why I'm talking like this. Okay. Hello and welcome. I am back for another Hungry Root video. My first one will be linked below, and that one is a more comprehensive review of Hungry Root, the whole process, everything you would want to know. But this one focuses on the nutritional value, a complete nutritional breakdown of a week's worth of Hungry Root meals. And then I'm gonna tell you what I think about it. All right, so we got another Hungry Root delivery. This one was unexpected, once again, because that seems to be how we do it around here. This particular box was $94.90, and it's 5 meals for 2. And we did not select these meals, they were selected for us. Disclaimer before I get into the nutritional breakdown, I am gonna give you my thoughts on the nutritional content of these meals, but I am not a dietitian or anything like that. This is just my opinion, and I'm just someone who tries to eat healthy at least 80% of the time. I'm not perfect with my diet, but I think I do a pretty good job. Our first meal was the peanutty lemongrass tofu and Brussels skillet. So basically shaved Brussels sprouts, Thai peanut sauce, and braised lemongrass tofu nugget. Total calories for this meal is 450, which I think is pretty great, pretty good for a whole entire meal. Fat, 31 grams, carbs, 28 grams, protein, 21.5 grams, and the sodium was 630 milligrams. The sodium in this meal is coming from the lemongrass tofu. I mean, all of that flavor, it's gonna have some sodium in it. That is 512 alone just for that. And then the other sodium comes from obviously the Thai peanut sauce. If you use less sauce, you're gonna also lower your sodium intake. So overall, I think the numbers on this meal are really good. The lemongrass tofu with Brussels sprouts was so good, full of flavor, so filling. We've had that meal before. I loved it. The Thai peanut sauce was delicious. It really made the meal, but the tofu also had a ton of flavor. So all in all, it was just a very flavorful, delicious meal. The next meal we had was the spaghetti and turkey meatballs. That was 660 calories, fat 14, carbs 103, protein 26 grams, sodium 820. The carbs are a little bit high as expected. It's pasta, it's a plate of spaghetti, and the sodium 820, that is coming from the turkey meatballs and the marinara sauce. Overall, I think that's pretty typical for a plate of spaghetti, and I think the numbers are actually pretty good. The turkey meatballs, nothing trailblazing or groundbreaking about that. I think we've all had it before, but it was really good. The meatballs basically melted in my mouth. They were so full of flavor. With the marinara sauce, we did add a little bit of extra seasoning to it to give it a little bit of extra flavor, but another great meal, very filling. The next meal we had was the baby broccoli black bean burrito bowl, and this was 520 calories. It has, for fat, it is 10, which is pretty low. 83 grams of carbs and 17 for protein. This is a vegetarian meal, and the sodium count was 1,004. And the majority of the calories on this is coming from the brown rice. The brown rice quinoa blend is so good, full of flavor, but it's pre-prepared, and with that came probably a little bit of extra sodium. The other thing that bumped up the sodium count on this is the green chili sauce. It was so good though, and that added 310 calories per serving to the meal. So that's something to think of. If you want to cut the sodium, you can go with less sauces, but you are gonna be sacrificing a little bit on flavor. Does not exactly look appetizing, but I guarantee it's delicious. Beans were 270 grams of sodium. So overall, I would say that this is a pretty low calorie, low fat meal. And the only thing that was a little high was the sodium. At 83 grams, the carbs were a little bit high too, but that's pretty much what you get with rice and beans. They are low fat, but they're high in carbs. I'm not usually that into sauces, but I tasted this and it's really good. Really, really good. I do not mind knowing that I'm gonna be in the kitchen multiple times per week when we have Hungry Root, because the meals are just so easy and the cleanup is so simple. A lot of times it's just one pan to wash, and to me that's so important because I am a lazy cook and I'm not a fan of cooking, but with Hungry Root, It's so easy that I just really don't mind. Okay, the next meal we had was the juicy sirloin beef with sauteed broccoli, and this is kind of a classic meat and potatoes meal. You have your protein, your vegetable, and your carb. At 410 calories, this was the lowest calorie meal that we got. The fat was only 7 grams, carbs 41.5, and protein 41 grams. The sodium count so low, 152 grams. So this is the kind of meal where the meat, the beef, was not really pre-seasoned. That only had 80 grams of sodium. And then other than that, it's just potato and broccoli, which comes from nature. And we did add our own, salt and pepper to that. This is your classic balanced meal, and it is reflected in the numbers. They're all pretty low. And this was also a very filling meal. I was so satisfied after eating this, and it was simple and basically just exactly what you need. Okay, our last meal was the simplest and also the least filling. It was the spicy chicken and cheddar panini. I really loved their pre-seasoned chicken. That was really good. It was just with a bun, and then added some of the green chili sauce and a cheddar round. The lazy cook in me didn't want to use the cheddar rounds because we had shredded cheese already, and I would have had to grate it. But I'm still happy we got the cheddar rounds because now I can eat them as cheese snacks. So I just went ahead and went with the shredded cheese that we had. Total calories for this one is 480. The fat, 13 grams. Carbs, 34 grams. Protein, 48 grams, and the sodium was a whopping 1,320. Majority of the sodium on this came from the pre-seasoned chicken breast. It is seasoned and pre-cooked, and it's really tasty, so that had some sodium. The green chili sauce, that's the sodium also. And then bread. A lot of people don't think about it, but bread has a lot of sodium, 280 calories. So what I will say for this meal is that I was not satisfied. I felt like it was more of a lunch. I had to add something extra with it, and then I ate like a huge apple after, and like yogurt. Like I needed to eat like snacks after dinner for sure in order to not be hungry. I calculated the calories, and I was about 100 off on this, and I don't know why. This was the only one that I was that far off. So the calories that I came up with were only 367.50 for this one, and the card had 480. So I can't really explain that one. I rechecked my numbers. I'm not sure what I did wrong. I'm just putting that out there. The rest of the 4 meals, super filling. I was so satisfied. And I think that it's gonna vary. This week, all of these meals satisfied me. On a different week, it might have been a different story. I think sometimes our appetite changes based on what we've been eating that day, what's going on as far as how much exercising we're doing, etc. But for me, in general, most of the Hungry Root meals are very satisfying to me. I definitely think that Hungry Root lives up to their claim of providing healthy, balanced meals. The calorie range was 410 to 660 for every single meal for this week, and the fat was 7 grams to 28 grams of fat. That's really great. The recommended amount of fat intake is 25 to 30% of your daily calories. So if you're eating 1,500 to 2,500 calories, that's gonna be about 50 to 80 grams of fat per day. If you are wanting to stay on the lower end of that, you may wanna stick to Hungry Root meals that have lower fat content, and you will just need to fill out your Hungry Root questionnaire accordingly and have them choose low-fat meals for you, or you can choose them yourself. But if you're on the higher end of that, then it won't be an issue. I think you can pretty much order whatever meal that you want from Hungry Root and know that it's going to be relatively healthy, low calorie, and low fat. The only thing I would say is that you do have to watch the sodium. If you have high blood pressure or if sodium's an issue for you, then you do have to be very mindful of that. That's how you get your flavor. So I think that, they're not gonna deliver you food that doesn't taste good. The recommended sodium intake is 2,300 milligrams per day, and it's hard to stay under that. Okay, so the thing about sodium is that it pops up everywhere and it adds up fast. If you start paying attention to nutritional labels, you'll notice that almost everything has sodium in it. Anything that comes out of a package or anything that is pre-prepared is probably going to have sodium in it, and probably a lot more sodium in it than if you made it at home. When I prepare my food at home, I definitely want it to have flavor, but I have a lot more control over how much sodium is going into it. And so I try and strike that balance. The more flavor something has, the more sodium it probably has. Unfortunately, it's the same thing with fat. A lot of high fat foods taste really good. Fat and sodium tends to be tasty. It also tends to not be as healthy for you, unfortunately. So because Hungry Root does have a lot of pre-prepared, pre-seasoned foods, that is something that you're just going to have to be mindful of if sodium is a concern for you. If you eat a high sodium breakfast and a high sodium lunch, you are probably not going to want to be eating 1,000 milligrams for dinner. It's just not going to be healthy in the long run for you over time. I'm not very likely to do Hungry Root every single week just because it would be too expensive. So if you're like me and Hungry Root is not something that you're going to be doing every week anyway, then it's probably not going to be a big deal. But again, it's just something to consider. It's always a balance. That's everything that I wanted to cover in this video. So I hope it was helpful. Thank you for watching.